Welcome back to the channel. Today we're making Summer Fruit Pavlova, and our first step is to make the pavlova base. The first thing we need to do is clean the mixing bowl and the beaters, removing any oil residue. To make our pavlova base we need 4 egg whites, so our first job is to separate the whites from the yolk. It's much easier to separate egg whites from egg yolks when the eggs have come straight out of the fridge. Now's the time to put our 4 egg whites in the mixer and turn them on at medium speed. You will need to make sure your egg whites are at room temperature for this step. It's much easier when whisking egg whites to use a balloon whisk, but if you haven't got a balloon whisk, beaters will do just fine. We're now whipping our egg whites to get these to a foamy stage, and we do that just before we add our sugar. Our egg whites are now at the foamy stage, so it's time to add the sugar. We're putting in 250 grams of caster sugar using a tablespoon, and I'm gently sprinkling the caster sugar into the egg whites. Now we've mixed all our sugar with our egg whites, it's time to put the mixer back on a medium-high spin. You know your mixture is ready when you start seeing the ripple effect on the top of the mixture. This is a good time to take the beaters out and have a look at them. If you're getting firm peaks, you know your mixture is ready. For this stage you're going to need an 8-inch spring form base. We simply draw around that on some parchment paper or greaseproof paper, and that will form the stencil for our pavlova. To ensure that the parchment paper doesn't move in the oven, we simply put 4 blobs of our mixture on each corner of our tray and pop the paper back. Now's the time to put all the mixture on the paper. We're trying to create the look and shape of a bird's nest with higher outer walls. Once you're happy with the way that your meringue looks, it's time to transfer it to the oven. So I've preheated the oven at 150 degrees C, and I'll be reducing that down to 120 C at the time I put the meringue in the oven. You will need to bake your meringue for 1¼ hours. Once your meringue has cooked, you need to leave that in the oven to cool down for a further 2½ hours. For this step, we're going to be using ½ a punnet of strawberries and ½ a punnet of raspberries. The strawberries will have to be hulled and quartered to make those the same size as the raspberries before placing them in the pan. To the fruit, we add 2 to 3 tablespoons of fresh orange and 1 tablespoon of caster sugar sprinkled across the top. Once you have all your ingredients in the pan, we bring this to the boil, then simmer it for approximately 3 to 5 minutes. You need to stir occasionally, which will help the liquid reduce. We want to end up with a fairly thick consistency. Once you have the desired consistency, remove the pan and let it chill. For this next step, we're going to garnish our pavlova with chocolate triangles and chocolate blades of grass. To make these, we're going to use 150 grams of dark chocolate, which we will use to make tempered chocolate. Our first step is to cut a 1-foot square piece of greaseproof paper and put a quantity of the tempered chocolate onto it. We're then simply going to spread that out with a palette knife to make it all one thickness. Once we've spread our tempered chocolate, we get a blunt knife and make cuts at 45-degree angles. This will form our triangles. Once you've made your cuts, simply put the paper to one side for a few minutes and let it chill. Once they're ready, you can peel off the triangles and leave those for decoration for later. Making the chocolate blades of grass is done in a very similar way. First of all, we spread out our tempered chocolate, and using brand new combs, we simply drag the comb from one side of the paper to the other, turn the paper around and do the same again. Now I like to just tie the edges together, so I just literally drop a little bit of chocolate on the edge there. And getting a mat and an old coffee jar, we simply get the piece of paper and lay it right across the top. This is then put to one side to chill. Once these have chilled, you can simply break the blades of grass off to decorate your pavlova. Prior to making the whipped cream, you want to make sure that your beaters and your bowl have been in the fridge for 30 minutes. Remember guys, single cream will not whip, so you need to make sure that your cream is double cream or whipping cream with a minimum of 35% fat. So to start with, we want to whip our cream in a slow and controlled manner, being careful not to over whip it. And once we start seeing the little ripples appear on the top of the cream, we want to add 1 teaspoon of vanilla extract. Now you need to keep whisking until the cream forms stiff peaks and flop over. An easy way to check this is to put a spoon through the middle. If you create a well, you're good to go. Our pavlova shell has had 2.5 hours to cool in the oven, and as you can see, unfortunately, ours is cracked. Our first step is to use our whipped cream to fill the centre of the pavlova. We can use the whipped cream to cover up some of those little cracks. And now we sprinkle on the top our leftover raspberries and our strawberries. Our next step is to add the fruit sauce that we created earlier, making sure that we dribble some down the sides, just where those cracks are. And our final step is to place our chocolate triangles in place. Give those a little sprinkling with icing sugar first. And now we garnish the pavlova with those little delicate pieces of chocolate grass to finish it off. And there you have it, a summer fruit pavlova.